In all the marketplaces, we want you to be empowered spiritually, and we also want you to be empowered academically, mentally, and emotionally. We want to build a well-rounded citizen who will take over, so that the kingdoms of this earth will become the kingdoms of our God and of His Christ. So that is why we have this platform. I just want, before I introduce our speaker tonight, just to recognize the grace that we have in the house, the pastors that are in the house tonight. Just wave and let us just recognize and appreciate. Yes, we don't take for granted what the Lord has invested in these people. Just wave. So we are blessed. Two of my friends, and these are giants and sons of the soil that I'm privileged to have had the grace to interact with and to be impacted by their lives, by what they do and what they have done and what they continue to do to our country. Right. I have Mr. Mogobe, France, the man on a white shirt, just yes. Those of you who listen to Dumai FM, you may have heard his voice several times. They sometimes host shows together with Mr. Mogobe. Sometimes he's on Caps FM, RB2 and all other platforms. Yes, the first time I heard him, it was at an event that was organized by Youth Alive, where he happened to share the stage with VC Tembegwai, and that is where I got to meet him, and I was awed by the level of insight that he has, especially on matters that have to do with finance and wealth creation. So he also will be coming sometime later, either this coming month, depending on how things will develop with regard to the corona situation. We are not sure how things are going to progress, but definitely we have him in our cards for the Destiny Night of Champions. So having said that, let me not waste too much of your time and just introduce the champion that we are bringing to the podium tonight. We call it this the Theatre of Dreams, but it's not in Old Trafford, it's in Pagaland here in Gaborone, but we believe that this is where dreams are realized, and this is where somebody's dream will be made. Mr. Mompoloki, Lerumo Mogobe is a man that I think needs no introduction to most of us because of the many hats that he wears, from his legal practice, from his hospitality business and restaurants and community service and all that. He is better placed to come and expand more. But I have seen him to be a very warm and welcoming person. There are people that when you, especially from the legal practice, when you hear of their conquests, especially in the course of law, you feel like, these are the guys I cannot approach. But when I had the opportunity to meet with him, I just found a very gentle person, a very open person, and down-to-earth person, and I was like, I'm making a little time. Yeah, because that's how I got to know him the first time, and I also is the one who started meeting the overcomers Duma FM and all that, but let me not bore you with a lot of things, but I just wanted to say but a few things just for you to appreciate the grace that the Lord has unveiled for us this evening. And then there is so much wealth in terms of experience and knowledge which is willing to share with us tonight. So let us stand up on our feet and put our hands together and let us welcome our one and only Mr. Mogobe, Mogobe. What you see is the camera please smile so that we want very nice pictures on the way nuggets of wisdom. Mr.
What a privilege, what an honor to have you come out of your busy schedules, to have you know all the directives about Corona, and to have the courage to come out and share with me this evening. Can I ask you to give a round of applause for yourselves? Being asked to come out and share your life story and some of the things that you have experienced in life is not something to be taken for granted. It is something which I'll be eternally grateful going forward. The thing I want to share with you tonight is from a speech that I had prepared, more like a sermon that I had prepared called The Man in the Arena. It is influenced by the teachings of MLK and also a great quotation from a great American president by the name of Theodore Roosevelt. So it will require a little bit of attention, and I will try and link it to my life story at the end. So please bear with me as I go through the story or the sermon. If I was standing at the beginning of time with the possibility of taking a kind of general and panoramic view of the whole of human history up to now, to today, and the Almighty God Himself was with me, and He says to me, Mompoloki, Lerumo, Mogobe, which age in history would you like to live in? That's the question that God would be posing to me, wanting me to have a quick check through history and decide where to be placed. As if I could go back and forth to the future and decide which historical epoch to go to. I would start with God's children and their magnificent trek from the dark dungeons of Egypt through the wilderness onto the promised land. But I would still turn to the Almighty and say, no, I don't want to stop here. I would even come up to the time of ancient Greece, and I would watch Plato, Aristotle, Euripides, and Aristophanes, the great philosophers of the time, assembled around the Parthenon. And I would watch them as they discussed the great and eternal issues of history or reality, but I still would not stop there. If you recall, the Parthenon was a place where ancient Greeks used to go and discuss difficult concepts, and the concept of democracy and the concept of the rule of law, and all these concepts were developed around that time. But I still wouldn't stop there. I'd even come up to the time of Rome, and I would watch a would-be emperor by the name of Emperor Caesar, the great Julius Caesar himself, cross a place called in France, called the Rubicon. And I would watch him as he vacillates, trying to decide whether to cross the Rubicon to invade into Rome. I hope, are there any students of history here? Yeah. Are there any students of history? With a show of hands. Okay. Turn to your neighbor and say, there's going to be a little bit of a history lesson here. And then I would watch Julius Caesar. If you recall, Julius Caesar was the governor of Gaul. He was crossing the Rubicon with a view to invading Rome and taking over what was then known as the modern world, which included North Africa and the rest of the civilized world. And this is a pivotal decision in history, because if he crossed the Rubicon, everybody knew that he would march into Rome and take over, and that Rome would cease from being a republic and become a dictatorship, which is an empire. Indeed, he crossed, and then it ended up as a Roman Empire. But I also spent a little bit of time around that historical epoch and watch the emergence of a great man. And I would watch the birth, the life, the crucifixion, the death, and most importantly, the resurrection of Jesus Christ. And I would have an exclamation mark around that period, watching the great historical events, and I would watch how this one man's life would actually divide times and create a division between BC, before Christ, and Anno Domini, the year of our Lord, which is 80, which is what we are now. We are in 80. And I would marvel at the powerful significance of this one life, which today is the reason we are here today. But I still would not stop there, because I would still want to have a further historical flight through history. Now take my mental flight and come through the time of the Dark Ages and go straight into the Renaissance. For those who don't know the Renaissance was that historical time when men awoken from darkness. During the Dark Ages, which has lasted hundreds of years, there were no recordings, there was no historical record of anything. But as you know, the Renaissance did a lot. That's the time of Da Vinci, that's the time of Michelangelo. But despite the magnificence of this period, I still wouldn't stop there. Turn to your neighbor and say, he still wouldn't stop there. I'll even come up to the time of the great Martin Luther. And I watch Martin Luther as he takes his 95 theses in the wooden door at the church in Wittenberg. This is in Germany. This is such a historically significant event, to the point where we wouldn't be here as a church. If it wasn't for that event, there would have been another event, I hope, that God brought into manifestation. But there would still be one church, namely the Roman Catholic Church, which decides what to read in the Bible, which decides how much to pay for your penance, and whether or not you're going to go to hell or to heaven. You had to pay a certain amount of money. It was ridiculous. This went for hundreds of years until a man by the name of Luther said, at the risk of having my head separated from my shoulders, I'll stick by the truth. I'll write these theses. Some of you who have master's degrees and who have doctorates know the importance of a thesis. And you stand by that thesis and you defend it. And you are taking on the papacy, and he stood by it. And as a result, we have this church today. We have my church, which is the Seventh-day Adventist Church, of which I'm a very active member. I even actively say to people, but for that event. But still, despite the magnificence of that, I still would not stop there. Tell your neighbor, he still wouldn't stop. He didn't believe it. I'll even come up to the time of 1863. And I'll watch a great American president by the name of Abraham Lincoln, vacillating as he was, eventually come to the conclusion that he had to sign the Emancipation Proclamation. With this historical decree, he signed to decide that people of your color, people like you and me, would not all of a sudden say, if you happen to be in West Africa somewhere, you're coming to fetch water around that time. And 1863 is not a long time ago. You're going to fetch water, all of a sudden, a bunch of slave traders will just grab you and you are shipped off. And if you go and see some of those entry points where people were shipped into those tiny ships, and by some accounts, only 2/3 survived across the Atlantic. Most people were thrown overboard. If you have anything remotely resembling the COVID virus, the COVID-19, what do you call it? COVID-19 virus, coronavirus, they throw you overboard. There's no time for medication. But why am I saying this? I'm saying this to show that not only did this historical decree emancipate the American slaves, it also emancipated would-be African slaves, because it was no longer profitable for people to grab you because of your color and put you, depending on how strong you are, put you across the Atlantic and take you up north. Yes, some of you are saying at the back of your minds, but Southern Africa wasn't affected. Parts of it were. Northern Angola was affected. Cameroon was affected. So, but that is a very important historical period, but I still wouldn't stop there. Tell your neighbor, he still is not stopping. I would even come up to the time of the 3 chiefs, and I would observe how these uneducated people, 3 chiefs who could hardly speak a word of English, they resolved in their hearts. God spoke to their hearts, and they took a very dangerous trip to London. And through the help of their translator, managed to mobilize the entire British public. What had happened is that the Minister of Foreign Affairs at the time had taken a holiday to Spain. And at that exact time, when he was telling them to wait and wait and wait, he's on holiday in Spain, they took advantage of that period and realized that they will not have the audience of Queen Victoria unless they do something. They went up and north. I don't know whether they went as far as Edinburgh, Scotland, where I spent 2 years of my life, by the way. But they went up and north and mobilized the British public, such that when the Minister of Foreign Affairs eventually came back and persuaded the Queen to give them an audience, the deal was done. The public was behind the 3 chiefs. Hama, can you finish the others? Sebele and Batwe. So these 3 chiefs were able to secure the freedom that we enjoy today by persuading the Queen against the majority of official opinion at the time. If you read some of the reports, and they went because the public was so enamored, the public was so taken up with these 3 chiefs that they went along, and Queen Victoria said, okay, why not? And I know part of the deal was that there will be the British Bechuanaland, which ended up being part of South Africa. That's a matter for another day. Because in my view, we should be part of Mafeking by now. But in spite of the significance and the overwhelming significance of that historical event, I still will not stop there. Remind your neighbor that I still will not do what? I would come up to the early 1900s, and I would make an observation and observe a great quotation which forms the basis of our visit and our togetherness this evening. A quotation by the great American President Theodore Roosevelt, not to be confused with another Roosevelt by the name of FDR, who came 2-3 decades later and told the world there is nothing to fear but fear itself. Can you say after me? There is nothing to fear but fear itself. That truism still applies today. But that's not my focus for our purposes. When you get to my age, whether you like it or not, sometimes you need glasses. Can I have your permission to consult my glasses? I tried to resist for some time, Pastor, but at some point I succumbed. Now, I'd like to read this important quotation. He delivered the speech in Paris, of all places. But before I read the quotation, let me tell you a little background about this man who came out with this great speech, which I think we're going to use for tonight. He was born with a thing called asthma as a child, which meant he had difficulty breathing, much like my son Sakhele, my eldest son. Over 5 years, we took him to all kinds of hospitals, all kinds of doctors, but his asthma was chronic. And here I'm going to be a little controversial by disclosing, Pastor, that we took my son not to a witch doctor, but to a traditional doctor. Because what she then did was mixed medicine that had caused us to survive over hundreds of years, and then my son was cured of asthma. To this day, I think we took him when he was 7. To this day, he's now 25. There's no sign of asthma. So why doesn't somebody say amen? Just because I mentioned the traditional doctor. So anyway, for our purposes, Theodore Roosevelt had this asthma, and then his father said, boy, you have to stop this silly disease. And his father enrolled him into a boxing gym and initially forced him to train boxing, but the boy got him to love it over time. And as a result of that father's decision, Theodore Roosevelt became a great boxer, who then became a great legislator, who then became eventually a great American president. So the point is that your life can be turned around from one occurrence, one influential person in your life.